Hello everybody. So after our call last Thursday, I wanted to provide a video that shows you how we can create the residential sector, the updated residential sector for the Cambodia LEAP dataset. So as we saw during the call, my colleague Ryan and I have extracted all of the information needed to be able to create the residential sector from things like the Cambodia socioeconomic surveys, from the cooking fuel consumption baseline survey, the World Bank report, national energy statistics. So now we want to try and put all of this information into LEAP. So the first thing I'm going to do is come into LEAP and click New to create a new LEAP dataset, and I'm going to call it Cambodia Residential. And because I've already created one, I'm going to call it Cambodia Residential 2. The reason that we're creating a separate LEAP dataset is because it's much easier to then add in new branches, to create the residential dataset, and to import it back into the main analysis once we are finished. And we can do this for the transport sector, for other sectors that we try and improve. So it's asking me if I want to go to and review the settings. I'm going to click yes. The main thing I'm going to change is the years. So in the data that we have data from 2010 to 2017 for historical years. So I'm going to say, well, I want to look for 2010 to 2017. My base year is 2010. My first scenario year will be 2018, which means I can then enter data for 2010 to 2017 for historical years. And my end year is 2030. In this video, we're just going to enter the data for the historical years, 2010 to 2017. But in our next calls and discussions, we're going to then think about the projections and how we project our emissions into the future. So then I'm going to click close. And in my data, I have data separated by Phnom Penh, other urban areas, other rural areas. So I'm going to create those three divisions. So the first thing I do is right click and click add, and then I create a branch called residential. And then the second thing I want to do is add another branch for Phnom Penh. Now in my LEAP dataset, I have different fuels that are used. Based on the socioeconomic survey, I have some kerosene being used for lighting. I have firewood, charcoal, LPG, and a little bit of electricity being used for cooking. So I'm going to add all of these fuels into the LEAP dataset for Phnom Penh. And I'm going to do that in a very specific way to import all of the emission factors that we need. So I could click add, and I could add a new branch for wood. I could do it like that. But I don't have any emission factors underneath wood to be able to estimate what the emissions are. A better way of doing it is to click insert branches from other area. And here I'm going to click on the Cambodia dataset that Dr. Sothia developed. So I'm going to use that dataset. And I don't want to import any information about scenarios, user variables, effects. So I'm selecting do not import all of this additional information. All I want is to take the branch for wood and put it into this residential dataset. So I'm going to click OK. And then it asks me what branch do I want to import. So I'm going to click traditional wood stoves. And now I have my traditional wood stoves entered into LEAP with the emission factors. So it will save me a lot of time having these pollutants added into this data set rather than having to do it manually one by one. And I'm just going to rename this branch wood. I'm going to do the same thing now for charcoal stoves. And I'm just going to rename this charcoal. I'm going to do the same thing again for LPG. And then I'm going to repeat this one more time for kerosene. Let's go for other and kerosene. And then for the last one for electricity, I'm just going to click add. I'm going to type in electricity and add electricity in. The reason that we can do that is because electricity is not, it doesn't have any direct emissions associated with it. So there's no emission factors that we need to add. Okay, so I've added in my branch for Phnom Penh. I'm going to copy and paste the branch. So I've got Phnom Penh here. I'm going to add in the same branches for other urban. Let's see if I can copy wood. No. So I'm going to insert branches from other area. And select wood again. Insert branches from other area. And select charcoal. Insert branches from other area. And select LPG. And finally, insert branches from other area and select kerosene. And then I'm going to right click, click add and select electricity. Okay. So I've got one more region, which is rural areas. So I'm going to add a branch called rural. And then I'm going to insert branches from other areas. traditional wood stoves. Let's do the same. For charcoal. And then the same for LPG. And finally, we'll do the same for kerosene. And then we click Add and select Electricity. Okay, so now we need to set up our units for this data set correctly. So for our residential branch, our units are the number of households. So we want our total, our overall unit to be the number of households. So I'm going to select units here. And then what we have here is correct. Phnom Penh, other urban, rural, the percent share of households. So let's now enter this data. Our total number of households has been calculated here. The sum of rural households, other urban households, and households in Phnom Penh. To enter this data into Leap, it's quite simple. We just copy this data, go to the area where we want to enter the data, and click Paste. Paste Special. So now we have the total number of households in Cambodia between 2010 and 2017. Now we need to enter the data for Phnom Penh, other urban and rural areas. So let's start with Phnom Penh. The percentage of total households I've calculated here as this value divided by the total number of households. And again, we can simply copy the values, delete what is there already for Phnom Penh, right click, paste special, and click OK. For other urban, we can do the same. Copy our data, delete what is already there for other urban, and click paste special. For rural, I'm going to delete what is already there, and instead of copying the values, I'm going to enter an expression, a little equation called remainder 100. What this does is adds up the percentage of households in Phnom Penh, in other urban areas, and whatever is left out of 100, it assigns to rural. So this makes sure that everything always adds up to 100. Okay. So then let's go down to the level of our fuels. So at this level we have percentage, what percentage of households are using each of these fuels. But our percentage share is incorrect. We want to change this to percent saturation. And the reason for that is that a household can have electricity for lighting and use wood for cooking. We can have multiple fuels being used in a household. When we have a percent share, like we have here for the number of households, we have a total number of something, in this case households, And we're splitting it between different options. In this case, Phnom Penh, other urban and rural. With fuels, we don't have the same. We don't have a total number of households and then we want to split it into different categories of wood, charcoal, LPG, because we can have the same household using wood and electricity. So in this case, we want to know how many of all households in Phnom Penh have wood, how many have charcoal, LPG, kerosene and electricity. And that these values don't need to add up to 100, and we can have different values for each. So that's why we have percent saturation. So if we go to Phnom Penh, we see that we see that for wood, we have between 11 and 8% of households using wood in Phnom Penh for cooking. So let's right click, paste special and press enter. For charcoal, we've got similar proportion. For LPG, we have the majority of households using LPG. For kerosene, I'm going to take the values under lighting for the proportion of households. It's very small. And finally, for electricity, almost all households have electricity. For lighting, I'm going to take the values here, 99.6 in 2017. Delete, paste special. Okay, so that's my data entered on the number of households that use these different fuels. But now I need to know how much of each fuel is used per household. And we have that data as well. In 2014, according to the Cooking Fuel Consumption Survey, we have 4.87 kilograms per household per day, 2.023 kilograms per household per day. So let's enter this data into Leap. The first thing I need to do is to change the units here that I'm entering my data in. Find kilogram for both wood and charcoal. And here I'm going to say interp 2014, because that's the year that I have the data for. 4.87 times 365, because we need to enter it as an annual consumption. So 4.87 kilograms per household per day, multiplied by 365 to get the value for the year. And for charcoal, it's 2.023. Okay. For LPG, our consumption is a bit different. For LPG, we have the values from the National Energy Balance, the number of tons of oil equivalent per household. So we took it from the National Energy Statistics 2016. So this is tons of oil equivalent per household. So I'm going to change the units here again. Tons of oil equivalent. And I'm going to copy this data here. Kerosene, it's the same story. Tons of oil equivalent per household. So I need to make sure the units are tons of oil equivalent per household and then change the values. For urban households, there is on average 127.8 kilowatt hours per month of electricity consumed. So I'm going to change my value to kilowatt hour, my units. Then I'm going to say interp, and this data comes from 2017. That's the only data that I have available. So 127.8 kilowatt hours per month, multiply by 12 to get the total value. Now I've entered all the data that I need to be able to look at the emissions and energy consumption for Phnom Penh. So we want to do the same for other urban. Firstly, by changing our percent share to percent saturation. And now I'm going to enter the percent saturation. So for electricity, I'm going to use the value for lighting here. For kerosene, also going to use the value for lighting. For LPG, use the value for cooking. Again, just copying the data and using paste special to enter it into Leap. Sorry. And for charcoal, and for firewood. Okay, so then I want to enter my energy intensity values. I'm going to start by changing the units. And the energy intensity values are going to be exactly the same for other urban as for Phnom Penh. The difference is the number of households in other urban areas using these different fuels. So I can take the same energy intensity values. So I don't need to go back to my Excel. I'm just going to copy and paste the expressions from Phnom Penh into other urban. There we go. Finally, we want to do the same for rural. So let's first change our percent shares to percent saturation. And then let's enter the proportion of households cooking and having lighting with different types of fuels. So rural areas for electricity, paste special. You can see the large increase in proportion of households with access to electricity. Kerosene, large decrease. LPG, an increase. Charcoal, relatively constant and quite small. And firewood. Okay, final step, energy intensity. So I'm going to change the units of my energy intensity to the ones that were used for Phnom Penh and for other urban areas. And I'm going to use the same expressions except for electricity, where I know that the amount of electricity consumed in rural areas is substantially lower than in urban areas. So I'm going to copy this expression, but then I'm going to change it because there aren't 127.8 kilowatt hours of electricity consumed in urban areas. There's 37.9 kilowatt hours per month consumed in rural areas, according to the World Bank report. So let's change this number to 37.8. Okay, so now I'm going to click Save. And if I click on Results, I can then look at my energy demand in residential areas. And I can see how it compares in rural, Phnom Penh, other urban. You can see most of the energy is being consumed in rural areas because they're the ones using wood and charcoal for cooking. I can change this to look at emissions. So let's look at black carbon emissions, for example. So we can see that there's about 3,500 tons of black carbon being emitted, mostly in rural areas. If I increase my levels even more, I can see that it is wood consumption in rural areas that is the majority of black carbon emissions compared to other sources. If I look at PM 2.5, it's similar. The wood consumption is driving the PM 2.5 emissions. So I hope this has been helpful. Please let me know if you have any questions.